Greetings, mortals, and welcome. Please present your tickets for validation. Thank you. Your existence has been acknowledged, and you have been granted access every Thursday and Friday. You will be accompanying your guides, Krista and Brandy, along with a world-renowned guest. They will be exploring an intriguing tendril of what humans refer to as reality each week, as they strive to advance you further down the path to the truths of your physical earth and what lies on the other side. Remember to please keep your hands and feet in the vehicle at all times, and do not exit until the craft has come to a complete stop.
Hey, welcome. Hey.
Hi, Krista.
How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good. That finally, today, this afternoon, my Thursday brunch with Bigfoot Rob show, 1:00.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't miss shows, as you well know, unless there's an internet problem or it's Thanksgiving, because that show's always Thursday afternoon.
Right.
And yeah, this morning I was out, went up to the local 7-Eleven here this morning, get a coffee or whatever, and I seen all the sirens. There was a fire department around. Some guy hit a telephone pole, took out a transformer in my neighborhood today.
Oh, good grief.
Early this morning. And so when I got home, I go, I guarantee you I don't have any power. The funny thing, and when I got home, sure enough, no power. And you know what's funny? This is the second time this same telephone pole has been taken out in the last 2 years.
Jeez.
It's like they got to move that pole or what? What bad luck, eh?
Yeah.
And how does somebody hit a telephone pole? Now, I don't know all the details, why this person hit it, but it was a pretty big accident.
Wow. I hope they made it.
Yeah, well, I didn't stop long enough for that. I wanted to get home and make sure. Yeah, sure enough. I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was an exciting start to the day. I'm just glad that they just got it up. They took a while to fix it. It took maybe 5 hours. I got the power back.
Wow.
Which was great because it was 90 degrees today, and it was one of the most humid days so far this summer. And it was just unbearable, with the heat. And then it rained, which brought on more humidity.
Mm-hmm.
So it was getting so I bought a bunch of ice. But luckily, if you don't open the refrigerators are pretty good. If you let them, you can go, your stuff doesn't go bad. You keep everything shut you can go 12 hours, 24 hours before you guys start worrying, I should say.
Still, man, that's a bummer.
Oh, yeah. Anytime you don't have power, gosh.
Yeah. Oh,
and then, of course, it's on a day where I have a show, and I'm like, gosh darn it. So,
right.
Yeah, hopefully, if there was no injury, I'm sure there had to be an injury involved. It wasn't on the news or anything, so I don't know. But they did get that taken care of.
Right.
And so here we go. Yeah.
There you are. Yeah, because as you all see, BMR is not Brandy.
No, I'm definitely not Brandy. I wore a hat though, in memory, for Brandy.
There you go.
Instead of my bandana.
Bandana. She had something going on with her daughter tonight, and she said if she got back in time, she'd hop on. But I'm not going to hold my breath because you know how kid things go. So no telling. So, but she'll be back tomorrow night.
Yeah, and you were telling me that who the guest was. I think you told me this a couple of days ago. Like, oh, cool, Chris Kramer.
Yep. Yeah, we have Chris Kramer tonight.
I said, well, that's a good guest to fill in for and listen to.
Absolutely.
What he's got going on.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little jealous, and I'll let him talk about it. But he just got back from Alaska and Oregon, and he's been doing some Bigfooting. So
that's what I heard. Alaska, I definitely want to visit. And Pacific Northwest also would be a cool place to visit, I think, as well. So looking forward to hear what he has to tell us about Alaska, Oregon, and such.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am going to bring him up. Hello, hello. Oh,
Hi, guys. Hello
how are
again.
you?
Rob, Krista, good to see you both.
Yeah, I'm glad you could come on tonight.
I'm doing great. Still kind of. I'm happy to. I'm still kind of settling in from the road trip, and it's good to be home. And I was thinking 90 degrees, Rob. That's like a cold front right now for me.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Whereabouts are you?
It's a little bit warmer in Arizona right now. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, okay, let me ask you this. We always hear about, I don't know if this is a myth or whatever, the dry heat. Is there really such thing as a dry heat, or you guys really don't have that much humidity down there? Over west, say down there, I guess you're southwest. Yeah.
So yeah, we're down here. So dry heat's a thing for a good part of the year. We have a monsoon season that occurs midsummer for about 6 weeks. So then we get some rain and then a ton and humidity, but it doesn't last long. But I always laugh, like, my family's all on the East Coast. I grew up on the East Coast, and so every time you go back and they say where I live, like I'm in Arizona, they say, "Oh, well, but it's a dry heat." They always say, "But it's a dry heat," and all I can respond to is, "So's a furnace, man." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I was about to say.
Don't think like you're getting off the hook because there's no humidity. It's brutal.
Right.
It is absolutely brutal. I don't live in Phoenix anymore. I live up in the mountains. It's real cooler.
Oh, that was nice. Probably a little bit cooler at night, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a little lag here, but that's okay. We'll make do with it.
I think we got a little lag.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I missed all that, Rob. What'd you say?
No, that's fine. I just asked, in the mountains, it should be a little bit cooler, but I was just going to equate that when you said furnace. I was thinking, yeah, it's just like turning on your stove to bake something in the middle of the summer, which I avoid the stove at all costs, especially during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Barbecue.
Yeah,
I barbecue mostly.
It's a different kind of heat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that all summer. I do all year round, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a different kind of heat. Where I live is at about 5,600 foot elevation, so it's quite a bit cooler. It's like 25, 30 degrees cooler than like Phoenix or down in the valley. It's much more temperate. We get snow, so we get seasons here, which is nice. Yeah, it's
very
good. So you can see I'm in my well-organized garage behind me.
That's okay. That's okay. Why don't we start off by talking about like how you ended up going to Alaska, Oregon? Let's start from the beginning.
It's a little convoluted, but I'll break it down. So this whole thing started this year because I was supposed to go, believe it or not, on a fishing trip with Steve Ishtal up in Vancouver Island. And due to some issues in my distant past, I found out at the last second that I needed to get a special travel waiver. I had some charges when I was in my 20s, which is a long time ago, that Canada doesn't, if you have a DUI inside of 10 years, they don't let you in. So you have to apply for this like special travel waiver. And we'd already booked the trip. We were going to take a cruise from Vancouver up to Alaska after this, and we had to reroute the whole thing and do it out of the States. And so in the interim period, I'm friendly with Jill Remsnyder and Brett Eichenberger from the Flash and Beauty crew, the producers of that. And they were kind of a lead hosts of the summer. It's on my wrist. It's the Sasquatch Summerfest in Oak Ridge, Oregon, which is about, an hour plus east of Salem, like in the mountains, in the Cascades, like a little mountain town. And so we ended up deciding to fly to Portland, rent a car, go out to Oak Ridge for 4 days, and then drive from Oak Ridge up to Seattle. And we took the trip up to Alaska from there. So it worked out better. I'm a little bummed out that I'll have to reschedule the thing with the How to Hunt guy till next summer, but I'm definitely going to do it. That's my plan anyway. So yeah, that's how we ended up there. It was If you've never been, I've been all over the country, but I've never been to the Pacific Northwest, which is kind of like a Bigfoot mecca. You know what I mean? It really is. I mean, that's just, all the great stories start in Northern California, Washington State, and Oregon, quite frankly. But what I wasn't prepared for, so this town was real small. Like if you had T-Mobile, you had no internet. Like it's
Gotcha.
really, really secluded, kind of like a I don't know, a bit of an economically depressed area, but still just a wonder. It's stunning, the area. It really is. And the park that they held the festival in was beautiful, and one of the things that really surprised me was I got to talk to so many locals in the area. And when I tell you, like, okay, the Bigfoot phenomenon is part of our lives, in Arizona and in Michigan, and in you're in, I forget where you are, either Ohio or Illinois.
I'm in Missouri.
But regardless, it is part of the Missouri. Okay, that's right. I knew. Sorry. So it is part of the zeitgeist of these people's culture. It is in their everyday everything, and the stories that I heard. Honestly, I didn't pay 5 minutes of time to the actual presenters. I was enthralled with the locals and with the just run of the mill guys that work in the timber mill coming up and just breaking down their experiences, and they were just unbelievable, just really cool ones. And then I hung out at the tent with Brett and Jill the entire time. My wife and I did, and they're just lovely people. And I'm sure you guys have seen their movies. I'm assuming you've seen Flash of Beauty and the Paranormal, the second one, which is it's the best Bigfoot movie that's ever been produced. The second movie is absolutely a must see, because I could identify and it resonated with all the things that as part of the Arizona 4 I've had happen, like on every level. I was really, really blown away by it. It was fantastic. They screened both movies back-to-back nights, and I had not seen either one of them I don't pay a lot of attention to a lot of other people, and I just never have, you know what I mean? And on purpose. And yet I felt obligated to put my friggin' ego down and watch it. And you know what? It's so professionally done. There's no agenda. The first movie kind of breaks down like the first generation of aping researchers. You know what I mean? Because they all were. Every one of them, from Gimlin straight through to Peter Byrne, John Bendernagel, John Green, Bobby Short, like that whole kind of first gen bunch. Yeah. And then the second movie looks at the exact opposite side of it and really takes a deep dive on both. So I again, if you haven't seen them, I would suggest putting it in the rotation, because they were, you'll identify if you haven't. I totally did. Yeah. So I don't know. That's the Oregon part of it. There wasn't a lot of, I think one of the guys there thought he was camping at the site at the park, and Toby Johnson, who's part of that crew, got contacted by this guy because he had some strange fingerprints on the side of his truck. It may have been a situation, Did you lose me, or am I good?
We gotcha.
Oh, we good? Okay. So that was the gist of the Oregon side, I went out on a few hikes when we were in Oregon. We went to a couple of hikes out to waterfalls. I saw a lot of structure. I think one time the entire trip, and just one time, and we hiked all through when we were in Alaska, and then while we were out in Oregon, did I ever feel like I may have gotten some sort of buzzing, zap thing. But that was it, man. I put a little, I was, every time I try and absorb that, it never happens. You know what I mean? But when I'm not really paying attention to it, a lot of the time that's when it occurs. Yeah. So I had one little, just a kind of like, we know, and we know, we're here. And that was basically it. I didn't get anything else in that, so it was cool though. And the structure situation in the Pacific Northwest, there's rainforests, like that's a different, it's all over the place in there. If you're out looking for that stuff, that's a great place to find it, because it's literally, you trip over it. It's literally so blatantly in front of you. So that was pretty cool, you know. I will say this. So one of the other guys from our crew from the AZ4 has spent a lot of time up there. And he asked me a question the other night. He said, did you feel like there was almost like a difference between the phenomenon that we have occurring up on the Mogollon Rim and other spots down here in the Southwest and up there? And you know what? I have to say, yeah. And this is what I think it is. There's definitely more of a physicality to their encounters and their sightings and the phenomenon, it seems like in that region than we experience down here. Like we get we get the physical sightings on occasion, but mostly it's a lot of cloak stuff, a lot of more light phenomena, more paranormally type things. But there's definitely seems like there's just more of a physicality to what's going on up there. And I don't even know what to attribute that to. But it was a cool question that he asked me because I definitely, when I thought about it, I detected that, you know what I mean? That there was something a little bit different. I don't know why it's different. I mean, that's all theory, but you know, oh man. So yeah.
Wow. I've never been and I want to go. Both Pacific Northwest and Alaska.
I'm wondering if you had
Alaska.
I was about to ask about Alaska. If you had that same feeling in Alaska as the Pacific Northwest, because for whatever reason, when people say Alaska, I just picture the Bigfoot or the cryptids out there to be bigger, but more not as predominant because it's such a vast land. You know what I mean? And seem maybe they're more wilder and maybe a little more aggressive. And that's just what I've heard and just really personally what I believe that could be true simply because of the rugged terrain.
Yeah.
There does seem to be some regional differences that I've, in my experience, like from the South and Florida and Louisiana and parts of North Texas. There's different types of stories and different types of encounter experiences. So I mean, we hiked. We went to the Mendenhall Glacier in Juneau, and then we hiked the trail out to there, which was beautiful, but it was almost like semi-paved, and there's a lot of people, so it wasn't like this like kind of resonating with a forest situation, But when we went to Skagway and we hiked about a 2-mile trail out and back, that when you get up there, I mean the structures in that part of the area, it's kind of like the gateway to the Yukon. That's where they used to stage all the like the gold miners. Like they would come into Skagway, and then there was this really, really difficult, challenging route that the local Indian tribe had developed for hundreds of years that they used to bring supplies and to set up to wherever they were heading for gold. But when you get up in there is without a doubt, it's very similar, I thought, to parts of like the Cascades, colder a little bit, but like the same. It's it's more temperate along the coast and the southeast coast in Alaska, and they get a lot more water and rain. And as a result, but I mean, again, the structure situation, these random X's in the middle of nowhere, just all stuff that, when you've been out doing this for any period of time, to look for that. It's just kind of like what happens. I can't go past a forest on the highway and not have my head like on a swivel when I'm going by still, So again, like I didn't get like literally the extent of my squatching was pretty much hanging out in Oregon and doing some hiking, and also, so we didn't really go out with intent. You know what I mean? It was kind of, my wife's, she's a knower, but this isn't her bag. And 4 days and no internet, Oak Ridge, Oregon. She was ready for the cruise ship. You know what I mean? But she accompanied me on every one of these hikes out to the glaciers and waterfalls, and it was wonderful. It really was.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you went to Alaska on a cruise.
We did. It's the best way to go, really. I mean, for somebody my age and my wife's age, not that we're old, like I would love to like go in through British Columbia and overland the Yukon, go into some of that remote stuff. I couldn't do that on this type of trip. but it's definitely going to be revisited in the next year because there's so much more. We get pigeonholed into our comfort zones with where our spots are and what we're doing, and I like to kind of branch out and venture off and just see what else is going on. Like there was, Rob, you can identify with this just from where in Michigan that there's definitely a shift in different areas in the country where the stories take on a different flavor and the experiences take on a different flavor, nationwide, and I know they happen up there. I mean, you guys are in like the dogman capital of the United States, really it is Michigan.
That's what they say. There's Wexford County is well known for dogman. I think it's one of the first sightings was in Wexford. And I had an encounter with a Bigfoot in Wexford at Cadillac. But you're right, because the lower southern, from the middle Michigan to southern Michigan, where I live, is totally different from northern Michigan. And then you have the upper peninsula. Very different climates, it's different stories or experiences. Then you get to all the Great Lakes, and then you add in the hauntings, haunted lighthouses, and then just the mystique of Bigfoot really takes its turn with all the paranormal activity, because Michigan has got everything. It really does.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
for sure. So
I've been to the Upper Peninsula. My brother played hockey, and go ahead.
You go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, we're lagging, and that's where the yeah.
No.
I was just gonna.
Yeah, no worries. Go ahead, go ahead, Krista, please.
To rewind and start from the beginning, like I know you've been on the show and talked about it before, but there's new people and stuff in chat, and kind of just start from the beginning, like how you got into all this strangeness too. Going out looking for Bigfoot. That's just not something everybody does. All.
Right on. All right, I'll give you the abridged version, I guess. I 32 years ago, I was living in the Midwest on the Minnesota-Wisconsin border in a little town kind of coincidentally named Prescott, which is where I live now in Arizona. And I had a friend that was a big hunter, and I grew up in Philadelphia, and he invited me to go out and go hunting with him in an area near the Wisconsin Dells in southwestern Wisconsin, which is kind of like a fairly well-known wilderness area. Well, during the summertime, it's a huge camping area, whatever. So, his family had a cabin up there that for like generations. So, I agree. I get my license and we head out, and it's wintertime. I'd say it's February. I think it was February, and so he puts me. We head out to this spot, and there's a huge hill. I won't say a mountain, but it was a pretty good sized hill that dropped down into a ravine, and then that was on my left, and on my right was another berm, and then running perpendicular to where he set me up in the stand was a creek that was about 40 feet below the berm. I mean, so I'm like kind of in this little valley almost, and then that drops down to another level. And he says, "Listen, I'm going to head up onto this." Up on the hillside, and I'm going to try and beat some deer down to you, see if I can get you a shot, right? So he takes off, and I'm sitting in the stand, and it's very cold, and this Philadelphia kid wasn't exactly a nature guy back then, and so probably about 45 or 50 minutes go by, and I hear some noises, and I'm thinking that perhaps he's been successful in kind of pushing a deer down towards me, but as I paid attention, the noise wasn't coming from the hill; it was coming from below me at the creek bed. And as I'm standing there watching out in front of me, and it's pretty clear, it's like a stand of pines, and then it's kind of like a clear valley in front of me that goes out for some distance. And I watched this guy, come over the berm to my right, probably about 35, 40 yards in front of me. And I'm thinking, so this guy's got like, it looked like you've heard this before. It looked like a guy in a black hoodie, is what it looked like. And I'm thinking to myself that I'm all in in an orange vest and pretty bright colors, and every time I talk about are we good?
Kinda, yeah.
We good? You got me?
Now we are.
Krista, can you hear me?
Now, yes.
How about now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I see this thing. All right, great. So I see this thing come up over the side, and I think it's a guy in a black hoodie, but it's not a guy in a black hoodie. It just keeps coming. A really massive figure. At the time, I would have said it looked like a 7-foot ape. And it turned and stared directly at me, and it wasn't an ape, and it had a man's face, just dark black hair all the way down. It grunted, it turned around, and it went right back down the way it came. And I'm in shock. This is I'd probably seen the Patterson Gimlin footage when I was a kid, but I mean Bigfoot's not even on my mind at this time. A lot of girls and beer and whatever, but that was what was on my mind. Right. And about 45 minutes later, my friend comes back down the hill, and I don't even know how to approach that question for him, but I'm like frozen solid in absolute shock. And I asked him, Tim, did you ever? And I broke down what I'd just seen, and his first words back to me, "Oh, so you saw him then?" And as we moved on with this conversation back at the cabin, this was a phenomenon that had been in his family for a couple of generations. His grandfather used to talk about it. They called it the old man of the hills, and it was something that they were very aware of. And so that's the short version of my first encounter and experience. And I don't classify myself as a researcher anymore. We're just experiencers on a journey, but I've done all that. And I think that was the direction. I took a deep dive for a long time after that. Kind of make connections that way and do some research that way. It kind of things started to blossom for me, and I almost years ago I moved to Arizona. And I linked up deep into the phenomenon, and things ramped up in a totally different way. So that's a short version of who I am and where I'm at.
Right. What made you quit?
Are we lagging that bad?
Doing the research in?
This is ridiculous.
Do you want to call me, Chris, and I can put you on speakerphone?
Rob, can you hear me?
I can hear you. We're on about a 3-second delay at least. That's I guess, right, Chris? About 3-4 seconds.
Yeah. Do you want to call me, Chris, and then I can just put you on speakerphone?
Rob, can you hear me?
Yes.
Are we good?
You must not be able to hear me, Rob.
You must not. Yeah. I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah, I can hear you, but I said you're delayed 3-4 seconds. He might not be hearing any of us.
Yeah, he might not be able to hear us. He's froze up now. Well, Homer. Let me message him here and see if he just wants to call me and come on that way. Hold on. There. Maybe. It'd be easier. Got big plans this weekend, Rob?
This weekend, no, not at all. I'm chilling out and.
Yeah.
Brandy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Krista, can you hear me? Rob, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I turn my camera off to try and save bandwidth if that's an issue. So let me know how much of that got lost in the wash.
It was a little bit lost. I just sent you a message. If you want to call me, it might be easier if I put you on speakerphone. If you want to do it that way.
We can do that if you like.
Yep, I'm going to send you my
Let me leave
number.
the studio, then put me on speakerphone.
Okay, I'm going to send you my number right now.
All right.
Give me a call. Okay. All right. I think that'll be a little easier, don't you, Rob?
Probably. We did that before with somebody, I think.
I do it with Brandy all the time because of her service is awful.
Yeah. Oh, I know poor Brandy. I don't even think she's been on a couple times. I think she's flat. I mean, her service now, at least she would come in and out.
Yeah. Okay, here he is.
Okay.
All right. Can you hear? That's perfect. Can you guys hear him okay?
I can hear you great. I don't know what is going on with this thing. It's driving me nuts though.
Can you hear me, Rob?
I can, yeah.
Okay. Can you hear Chris too?
Yeah, pretty good. Better
Okay.
than it was better than what we had.
All right. Better than what we had, so perfect.
All right. I'm telling you, my wife and I are shopping for new internet service, and this happens occasionally, but not all the time. But I'm sorry it's happening tonight, guys. I apologize for kind of disrupting the show, man.
Oh, it's all good. You know, it's the thing with live shows, you know. It happens.
Yeah, it is what it is. So I don't know if I need to back up on any of that or back
I think
how
so.
I made it across.
I think so. Can you back up on some of that? And because you were kind of cutting in and out.
Okay. Long and short, I had my first experience in the Wisconsin Dell area with a friend of mine that hunted. I had an encounter with a 7-foot plus Sasquatch from about 30 yards away, a good 15-second visual capture. When I informed my friend about it after he came back down from the hill where he was trying to beat deer down to me, and I asked him about it, and this is always the interesting recap of this, is when I told him, I didn't even know how to talk to him about it, but when I brought it up to him, hey, did you ever see? And as soon as I said that, he looked at me and said, oh, so you saw him then. And
wow.
That opened up a long conversation on the way back to the cabin and further. So they'd had this cabin for a few generations, and the stories of the hairy man of the hills had been in their family for almost 100 years. Their grandfather used to talk about it. And so that I kind of validated the fact that I wasn't hallucinating and that I'd seen what I'd seen.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that was 32 years ago. And I've been vested in trying to look for answers and research and come to some understanding of this for that entire time, basically. I mean, I had a couple of years raising my kids, but really in the last 6 years, since I moved to Arizona and I linked up with the guys from the Arizona 4, who are probably as far down the road as anyone I've ever heard of in this phenomenon. Seriously. I mean, just ridiculous. And, you know, my time with these guys, like I've seen and witnessed and interacted in the most fantastical way in many ways. You know, I mean, you know about my hand healing. I've talked about that in the past. But I've seen, and you know, I've just been really blessed at be in that environment and just be in the situation that I'm in life right now. You know, beautiful thing.
Right.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome. So you said that, you know, you used to get out in the woods and do research and stuff. What made you quit doing the actual, you know, on a regular basis?
Oh, I still go out on a regular basis.
Gotcha.
So there was a time in my past, and most of the guys that I go out with past were, you know, I mean, we were doing all the common things that you hear people when they get started in this, you know, the trying to provoke responses and gifting and, you know, all the tech with trail cameras and great, you know, phone cameras and parabolic mics. And, you know, we had a degree of success with that stuff. But as we continued down the road, right, and we started to experience a little bit more of the outlandish things in communication, some of the mind speak stuff, it was put to us as a group one night that they asked us to put the cameras away. And we did. You know, they didn't like it. The audio wasn't that big of a deal. but the videography and the camera thing. And I think at this point we were ready to do that anyway. I mean, what's the purpose of that, really? Like, what's the purpose of it? AI has driven the last nail into the coffin of video evidence. Mm-hmm. None of us felt like the need for evidence was even a need anymore. That ship sailed a long time ago. Pictures and video have value to one person, and that's the person who took them, you know? Because it doesn't matter what you present publicly. There's just as many people that either say they can't see it, or it's a blob squatch, or it's AI generated. So it has the validity's all gone with it anyway. Mm-hmm. It has literally no relevance anymore. It really doesn't. And so I used to love to do it. It was part of what I loved to do, was going out. I always felt like I knew where to point the camera. Did some pretty cool stuff over the years. Mm-hmm. But when we did that, and we showed that we were doing it, like the level of communication that that we've been having and interaction and the nature of it, it all changed like in a dramatically great way. And at this point, I can't imagine ever going back to doing it like that. We don't gift anymore. We don't, mm-hmm. We're not out. Like I said, we don't even need to provoke responses. And they come to us, you know what I mean? Like we don't even have to, and no one's out looking for Bigfoot anymore. We know where they are. They know where we are. If they want, everything's on their terms. But if they want to interact, they interact. We're just mm-hmm. glad to be out there doing it. That's kind of our collective mindset these days. It wasn't always like that though. Mm-hmm. But
so basically, like what you're saying, you don't have to even venture out into the woods when you're camping or whatever. Just sit around camping. It sounds like that. I guess you make enough noise and get their attention, they'll come into you.
So we have 4 primary locations that are 3 of them are up on the Mogollon Rim within a couple of miles of each other. Mm-hmm. And then one of them is north of Roosevelt Lake. And the one north of Roosevelt Lake is where they had my hand healing done. And that was, I call it Crazy Town. And it's way up there, almost 10,000 foot elevation, really. So when we say we're not out looking, our spots are still remote. It's a job to get back there. You know what I mean? So It's not like we're pulling into the KOA and setting up and roasting wieners and oh, here they come. It's not like that at all. Like if you don't have like an overland rig, you're not getting back there. Period. Gotcha. You know what I mean? So and as far as the other, everything we do in the dark. It's always at night. It's always we've had daylight sightings, but like everything that when we're out and we're trying to engage, maybe. It's all done, in a really peaceful, chill, dark situation. We try and sometimes line it up with a full moon and get a little bit more light on the situation. But, a lot of their kind of the phenomenon that goes on with them, it produces a lot of light too. It's kind of better to be in the dark anyway. So, that's been the experience, for the last couple of years. I have a great one to tell you. Krista, because I had so we last spoke in May, mm-hmm. May 2nd, mm-hmm. and my father passed away May 14th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So like 2 weeks after, he was 91 years old. He was in hospice and he was very ill. So this is the story I want to tell because this happened. Mm-hmm. So it's whatever the Friday. I guess it was the 14th or whatever, and I planned to go up to the rim to spend a couple nights out with Kev Keeney, one of the Arizona 4 guys, mm-hmm. right? And so I'm driving along the 260, which runs below the rim. It runs west to east or east to west from central Arizona all the way to New Mexico, like to near Gallup and through the White Mountains. Beautiful highway. Mm-hmm. So. And the Mogollon Rim sits above this for most of that, a good 70, 60, 80 miles of the rim. And the Mogollon Rim area comprises 3 national forests that all converge. There's Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, Coconino National Forest, and Tonto National Forest. And these are all vast wilderness areas. There's thousands and thousands of acres of ponderosa pines, mesas, and nothing. It's just it's a beautiful desolate place. So as I'm driving, I'm probably about, I don't know, 15, 12 miles away from the turnoff where you take a left to head up into elevation. They call it up to Rim Road, they call it, because there's a road that runs along, there's a trail that runs along the edge of the rim, and then you kind of go back from there, you know? And I get a phone call from my brother, and he informs me that my father had literally just passed. And I had said my goodbyes to my dad the day before on FaceTime. He was unconscious and had been for days.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and of course I had that kind of nagging, you know, there's no way I'm making it back in time. I knew it, you know what I mean? He's in Cape May, New Jersey, and I'm out in, you know, Pumpkin Nuts, Arizona. I couldn't do it.
Right.
And I feel guilty about that a little bit, actually. But so he lets me know, and I talk to my siblings, and, you know, we'll kind of console each other for a few minutes. And then I pull over to the side of the road while I still have signal, and I call my wife, and I call my children, and let them know that, you know, my dad had passed, my grandfather passed, and we had to make some arrangements to head back east for funeral arrangements. So now I'm sitting there, I'm already on my way up there, and I'm torn between what to do. You know what I mean? And I resolved myself that I'm just going to go through with it. I thought if I wanted to process the death of my dad, there was no better way and no better place to do it than unplugged out in nature with my dearest best friend, who also happens to be an ordained minister and somebody, a bit of a spiritual advisor for me as well, you know? And so I continue on. Mm-hmm. So I get up onto Rim Road, and it's really rocky. It's so beautiful. It overlooks the edge of the rim. It's like 40 miles of Grand Canyon, basically, is what it looks like. Just stunning. And then I take a right, and I head back on the back trails with my truck. And I'm just going to tell you what happened. So about 7 miles in, and I mean, you're going like 12 miles an hour on this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you got to have strong four-wheel. I come to the intersection of a trail, and right when I cross the intersection, I get the loudest, deepest voice projected into my head. And it literally says to me, "We mourn with you the loss of your father, and we celebrate that he is at peace with the Creator now." Wow. And I started to shake. And I pulled over to the side of the road, and I was a little raw anyway, but I wasn't real emotive until that happened. And then I just was like, it was just this really profound thing to say and hear, you know? And I mean, I'll preface this by saying and we have all experienced mind speak to various degrees over the course of the last however many years. And some of it's been real direct, and some of it hasn't. Some of it's somewhat subjective, so I just don't chalk that up to what it was. Mm-hmm. But this was undeniable. And so I kind of composed myself, and I keep traveling along, and about 10 minutes later, I see Kevin hiking up the trail. And he knew my dad, and he jumps in the truck with me, and I tell him what happened, and, you know, he gives me a hug, obviously. I mean, I choked up talking about it, quite frankly. And so we get back to the spot that we're at. We call it Coyote Camp. And that night was a top 3 encounter experiential night that I've ever had, ever. I mean, you know, I mean, they're from twinkle lights going off to Orbs through the forest to a full physical sighting right at dusk to footsteps to some degrees of mind speak, a visitation from an elder, one of the Gan that lives in that area. Like, it was like my ego or my mind felt like they were doing this in celebration and in mourning with me, you know, because it was, you know, the next night was a fart burger. It was nothing, you know what I mean? But that night was just, and I think I always, you know, I've said this to you before, because I always feel like what you bring in there is what you're going to have reflected back at you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And, like, you don't have to be a perfect person, but I think that night in particular, like, I was just so connected internally and openly, emotionally honest, like, internally, that it reflected back at me through, that's what they were sending back to me. Like, that's what it was like. Because, I mean, it was, how do you even say that with a straight face, that whole story? But that's been, those type of things have been, you know, like a part of my everyday normal life for a long time, and that was what happened that night. And so it is what it is, man.
That's incredible. Seriously, like, I mean, it it shows like compassion on their part.
Yeah, I always say this too, man, and I think Rob can identify with this, is that just because, and I will say, I mean, the story of the healing of my amputated hand, like the things that have happened to me that with them, that just because I've had these incredible uplifting experiences, that doesn't dictate the entire, it's just our spectrum of the phenomenon, man, because I've heard horror stories and malicious, frightening stories, and I believe those people. I believe them because, number one, I mean, not everybody involved in this, you can't call everyone a liar, right? I mean, if we can't be authentic, and I mean, that's really been my life journey, and really is to, I want to present to be exactly what I am when the door's shut and no one's looking, as I am in public. You know what I mean? Like, that's really important to me. I don't think it used to. I mean, I was this grimy, hellraiser for a long time. And, and that part of my life has been over for a long time. And so that internal growth stuff, I really believe this. And Ron Moorhead talks about this in his book. Like, I really believe that, like, there's a flesh and blood component. There's a paranormal component. And there is, without a doubt, a spiritual component to this thing. And I believe that they resonate on that spiritual vibe. Whatever that is, whatever that you project out of yourself, they pick up on that. I believe that. You know what I mean? Like, you hear things like, oh, they know what you're doing before you even get there. That may be true. I don't know. Yeah. But I know what they know who you are as a person and how, and you can't fool these entities with subterfuge. You just can't do it. Like, if you come in there with bad intent, you're going to get that reflected back at you. If you come in like some of these other research guys, the lead tracker person and these other guys are out hunting. If you're coming in there with that mindset, you're going to get that thrown back at you. If you come in even like the April crew, like the Finding Bigfoot with us, we're going to search for the elusive Bigfoot. Well, then you're never going to find the elusive Bigfoot. Right. You know what I mean? Like, that's being reflected right back at you. So I think that's a lesson that we've learned that is held up. And I it's one of the few things I think I know. It's what I know, and again, that's just I know for where we are and what we're going through.
Yeah, I think your intentions, not only with Bigfooting, but I mean, I talk about this all the time, ghost, everything, do anything you do, if you go in with good intentions, you got to, because like you said, it can be thrown right back at you. And I sure, like BMR here, he had an awful encounter, with the Bigfoot.
I've heard that story.
Yeah.
That's why I included that caveat, because I know I thoroughly believe Rob. I always have, and I know that the nature of my encounters has not been the nature of his. You know what I mean?
Right. So, well, and that's what I'm wondering. Maybe like there's like just like there's good people and bad people. Maybe there's good Bigfoot and bad Bigfoot.
Absolutely. I think there's those that resonate on a good level of goodness and I think there's ones that are indifferent, and I think there are ones that are malicious. You know what I mean? It's just like any race of people. You have good eggs and bad eggs, and an egg somewhere in between, which is probably what I am. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I really believe a lot of things you said. I totally agree with. I think if you have the intention of finding Bigfoot, you ain't gonna find him. I do believe Bigfoot finds you. You don't find him. I find that most people that aren't even looking are the ones that stumble across these things. And you know what though? I find it fascinating and a little, I don't want to say creepy because it's a wonderful experience, but how the Bigfoot, communicated to you and knew what was going on. It's almost like he read your mind or he was there in a spiritual presence.
Yeah, I thought maybe because I was kind of close. I was probably 25 miles out once I got up there. You know what I mean? But like, I don't know. Like we've had a couple of the guys have had things happen at their home. I've had 2 things happen over the last 6 years in where I live that weren't unnerving, but they showed up. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't think that, you know, when I hear things like, oh, they have migration patterns from River Brown, I don't think they require space the way like that. You know what I mean? I think that they're able to move around in a different way than perhaps we understand. I don't like to use commonly thrown out terms like portals, and nobody knows what that is. I don't care. Anybody says that they can speak with a surety about anything 100% on this phenomenon and all the related ones is full of it, man. They just are. They don't. Yeah. It's literally all conjecture. And I don't care how much you research. I mean, in the biblical text and in the Sumerian tablets and in all these alternative historical possibilities, the reality of it is we just don't know, man. We don't know, right. And I know that going into it. I don't know that we're supposed to know or meant to know. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree with you. What do you think that orbs are? The orbs out in the woods, because I've witnessed them myself, but just out in the middle of nowhere.
I know that. You were telling me about you and Brandy seeing them down at the LBL one time, and you had some, and then you said also in some of the more occult kind of other paranormal things that you guys investigate, you've had that. So I think there's probably, if I were to hazard a guess, because that's literally all it is, as educated as I can make, I think there's multiple answers to that. Yeah. I think that, the coinciding of orbs with the Sasquatch people is well documented. It's been part of the phenomenon since I've been around it. I think we thought that perhaps an orb could be them transitioned into an energy state, has always been a possibility. Mm-hmm. I think that, when then it drifts over to the ufology, because they almost look like they're remotely controlled drones sometimes. You know what I mean? Right. Like some sort of investigative apparatus that we don't know what they are or what it is. But
sure,
that's been my experience too. Like I've seen different the movie. Some of them seem like they had cognizance, and other ones look like they were being driven. You know what I mean? So I think the jury is still out on that. I think it's a multitude of I think it could be multiple situations,
I do too.
Just like out there, there's multiple things going on simultaneously besides just the Sasquatch people. There's take the other cryptids out of it. There's the ufology stuff. There's perhaps some of the ghostly stuff. There's got to be an interconnecting thread that winds through all of it. And that might be what we're doing here is trying to connect those dots. But man, I'll tell you, I'm 32 years in and I think I know now less than I thought I knew 20 years ago. That's true.
Absolutely. I agree. And the thing too, even like portals, we talk about portals, I think there's different types of portals too, because, there's portals that, are, ghost and, ghosts come in and out of. I personally don't believe that ghost and Bigfoot come in and out of the same portals, but that's my opinion. I think they're different.
You may be right if that's even what they are. So a couple of years ago, I think I talked about this once before. One of the guys from the AZ4 was a BFRO investigator from 2010 up until about a month ago. And he started this thing out when he got linked up with us. He was a straight up aper. And this man gets down on his knees and an atheist, and he gets on and he prays every day. I've seen the full conversion to Chuck Jacobs. It's an incredible, really thing.
Yeah.
75 years old. This guy was the fire chief of Payson, the city of Payson, Arizona, for 30 years. A lot of local cachet, and yet he's one of us, right? So one of the reports that he took about 4 years ago, he got asked to go out to this a woman who worked for the Forest Service. And she was a 32-year vet in the Forest Service, semi-retired, but still had a route. And she had a little ranch out in near Sholo, Arizona, which is right at the base of the White Mountains. Just, you know what I'm talking about, you use the term squatchy. I mean, it is stunning out there, beautiful. She had some livestock, and she was having a lot of strange things happen on her ranch, and livestock, chickens getting killed, and weird things, just all kinds of weird shit, right? So, pardon my language. So,
you're good.
And she was not a Sasquatch person. Like, it wasn't even on her radar. But she started, Chuck had left. For some reason, she called the BFRO because she was at wit's end. She could not peg what this was. So, long story short, Chuck and another one of our guys goes out and sit out for a couple of nights, and they have some activity, and they get a little bit of communication, and they make an arrangement, and all the stuff stopped. And from this woman went from being a complete dog in the hunt to all in, and she started to experience a high degree of mind speed communication with a family group that lives on her property. She's got a lot of acreage. So I'll move this along. She goes out to visit her mother about a year or two later in California, and she has a woman. She's a fifth wheel on the property that she has a woman that comes and takes care of her livestock when she's away, and feed the goats, whatever. So the woman comes and spends the first night on the property, and it's a beautiful full moon, and she goes out and starts taking pictures with her cell phone. She has a decent camera apparently, and she's taking pictures of the moon and the forest line, and she snaps a bunch of them in a row. And next thing you know, she gets, I'm assuming she got completely heavy zapped, and she had no idea what was going on. She went running into the fifth wheel, and they literally harassed and terrorized her all night. They were slapping on the sides of this thing. They were zapping her all night. She calls up this woman, Lorna, in a panic at 3 o'clock in the morning and says, listen, I don't know what's going on at your property. I want to leave, and I'm scared to leave the trailer.
Wow.
Explains to Lorna what's going on. Lorna says, listen, just sit tight. I'm on my way. I'll be back by 11 o'clock tomorrow, right? In the morning. So the woman hangs in there for the night. I guess it subsides. And so Lorna shows up, and she quizzes her. What's going on? What happened? And so she tells her what she'd been doing. So they break out her phone, and they're scrolling through the pictures that she took. And they come across a shot that, okay, I've described this as, do you remember what a Pink Floyd set used to look like, with a big purple ring of fire behind the band as they played their big stadium tours, right? I've seen the photo. It literally looks in the middle of the forest like a 30-foot diameter, purple, misty, electrical ring of fire, and it is it's not some weird camera distortion. It's what was in the photo. Not visible, obviously, like so many of these things to the naked eye, but the camera seemed to pick it up. So she calls up Chuck, and Chuck says, well, send me a copy of it. She tries to send it to him, to send him the link through Messenger, and it doesn't work. Nothing will come through. So he ends up driving out to Sholo, and he sees it on the phone itself. And she gets this mind speak clear as day. That is normal. Sorry for last night. And then they use this term, please don't publish this.
Wow.
And so, right? That's crazy, right? So, and so I've seen the photo. It's stunning. I mean, it is what it is. They didn't ever respond to what exactly it was. So obviously we leaped to the conclusion that this was some sort of portal transfer thing that they frequently use to come and go. Perhaps we never really got a defined answer about what that phenomenon was. However, I think, our instincts and our past experience and our years around this, that's what we jumped to. You know what I mean? That we actually caught a defined picture of a portal that was activated, which was pretty cool, man,
Yeah.
This woman's having crazy things happen, man, Lorna's cool. I'll tell you another one from her. Mm-hmm. So she's on the phone with Chuck about 2 years ago, and I was a couple months before my wedding, right? And she didn't know me. She knew Kevin and she knew Chuck, but she didn't know me. And she didn't know much about my life. and Chuck's talking to her, and she's on the property, and Chuck's on the phone, and she says, "Oh, by the way, tell Chris congratulations on his new mate."
Wow.
Right?
That's crazy.
that type of stuff just cracks me up. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't know, man. These guys are dialed in a little bit more sometimes than you think they are, uncomfortably so, you know?
Right.
Yeah, that happens.
And that's what I'm saying, where I go back to, same as you, there's got to be a supernatural aspect to them to, know all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a subjective term, right? Like, supernatural just means maybe it's something that's natural that we just forgot how to do or don't have access to. Maybe it is normal. You know what I mean? It's just something like, it'd be like, looking at a chimpanzee trying to, fly the space shuttle. You know what I mean? Like, maybe we just aren't there yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what they say, in basic terms with even paranormal, it's just something that we don't know or understand, so we call it paranormal. Paranormal isn't always ghosts and spirits and hauntings, right? I got to ask you, because I believe in certain theories, but you mentioned Ron Moorhead earlier. These creatures, and some of them, allegedly get 8, 9, 10 foot tall, 1,200 pounds. And I like Ron's one theory about that they simply can move so fast, and put aside the cloaking aspect, that they simply can convert all this mass into energy. And a lot of times what we're seeing is it's an energy burst. You know what I mean? And how they can just appear and disappear so fast.
I ran with the possibility that these guys can control mass and density of their own bodies. That's something that I'm not so sure isn't true. I'm pretty close with Mark Abel from Colorado Bigfoot. I've been up to Colorado with him, and I've been out with him numerous times. And probably nobody has more, that term, boots on the ground. And I mean, talking about it, he's lived in a fifth wheel up in the Colorado Rockies for 12 years and has been out every single day, weather allowing, and probably has over 1,500 mini documentaries that he's really incredible. A lot of his visual stuff and I've seen what appears to be a 3-inch Sasquatch at the base of a tree kind of walking away, and I'm like, it looked like a patty that was like 3 inches tall, you know what I mean? So, I've always wondered if that guy decided he could become a 9-footer real quick, maybe, you know what I mean? I don't know, but I think it's on the table. I don't think there's very little that isn't on the table at this point, quite frankly.
Right.
Right.
So have you been out exploring and doing your thing and come across anything you think that might not be Bigfoot, but been like maybe a dogman or, a different type of creature out in the woods?
Back when I just saw somebody named Big Bird asking, is he talking Colorado Bigfoot, Mark? And yeah, it's exactly what I'm talking about is Mark Abel from Colorado Bigfoot. He's a close friend of mine. So yeah, back when I was pretty seriously engaged in a lot of videography and camera work, I mean, you can't spend as much time out there pointing the camera out into trees and structures and forests and not start seeing a lot of other things besides things that look like a Sasquatch, right? I mean, like, you just can't. I mean, it's literally, if you start time stamping video, you're going to just start seeing stuff that's like, yeah, some of it may be pareidolia, but, a lot of it isn't, you know what I mean? Pareidolia doesn't have eyeballs and nostrils, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I think I've probably taken a solid pick or two by accident of something that may have been a dogman. I don't believe I've ever had an encounter or an experience with a dogman entity that I know of ever. You know what I mean? I don't think that's happened. I don't think I don't think I have, really. I think I've taken some pictures of what could possibly be construed as that. Again, that's all subjective though too, I mean, I haven't had like some of these other guys down in the LBL and some of these other dogman encounter stories that I've heard, and I'm not dubious of that. It just hasn't been my own personal experience. I really believe 99% of what I've experienced has been with the Sabe, Sasquatch forest people. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. I just hear a lot of people that, that when they're out there so often, they do run into dogman and, these other things. So I was just curious.
Yeah, no, I've heard a lot of crossover. You know what I mean? I mean, we've spoken about this before, Chris. I'm very, very cautious about who I engage with publicly with this stuff. You know what I mean? I think I've been a lot more open in the last 3 years than I've ever been. I don't have a channel, and that's on purpose. Kind of keeps me out of some of that other stuff that seems to go on, which and I'm blessed enough that if I feel the need to get my voice out there, that I have wonderful people and great platforms that will invite me to do so, like you and a handful of others of people that I trust.
Yeah.
So that being said, a lot of the dogman's kind of like the cryptid flavor of the year the last year or two. You know what I mean? And so I'm very, I won't say skeptical, but I'm pragmatic about how I look at a lot of the public faces that engage in that probably more than anything else. You know what I mean? And it's not that I'm a disbeliever, man. I know these. I mean, I've been around this thing too long to know that there's a lot of other cryptids that are real than just the forest people. I know there are. I mean, I know there are. There's people. I mean, Scott Carpenter probably caught, rest in peace, probably caught the greatest video of a dogman entity ever. I mean, that was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my life. It had this little kind of gray alien gremlin on its shoulder. It was whispering into its ear. It was video. It wasn't a picture. I mean, it was so clear, So they're real, right?
Right. Absolutely.
I don't know if I want to be one. I never hear any really good things about the dogmen. You know what I mean? They seem like a little bit more wild and maybe a little bit more aggressive and maybe a little bit more, maybe some malice involved there. I don't know.
Yeah. I dogman's nothing that I want to come up face to face with. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rob, you look deep in thought. You're on mute.
Well, okay, there we go. Now, I was just thinking, we were just talking about the dog man, and I was just going in my head that, I just realized, or maybe I didn't, and I just probably always knew this. Every person I've talked to, whether it's been on a show or contacted me or even watching other people's shows or other podcasts or whatever, I can't come across any dogman experiences where they've been positive. They always seem to have some intent, and they make damn well sure that they know that they can get you, right?
Yep.
And that's that's what I think most people comes across. But I did want to ask right quick about the concept of the mind speak. I think that we do get communicated by entities, whether it's Bigfoot, Dogman, or anything paranormal. I think it happens. My question is, and Tex says this, he says it quite a bit, but I'm a little different. My opinion is different than his. I do have the question, though, how do we know what's communicating with us? I think in the case of what happened with your father.
It's a great question, man.
Yeah, I mean, we could be thinking it's a Bigfoot talking to us, communicating all along, and maybe it was something nefarious. It wants to take us to a place where we don't want to be at, right?
I think to be fully trusting, even with some of the really uplifting and great experiences that I've had and that all of us have had, quite frankly, there's always that nagging thing in the back of my head that knows that I could be so greatly deceived and beyond my discernment ability to even see it, So that's where I put enough faith in God, man. I put enough faith.
Sure.
I identify as a Christian. I am and somewhat of a biblical creationist, but I I don't hang my hat on that. Like I saw people talking about the Nephilim in this chat, you know, and you know, that has not been my experience. You know, it hasn't. There was a time in my life, let's say 2010, 12, 13, 14, where I felt that Scott Carpenter and the Melba study and all that led to Scott hit the nail on the head that these entities were descended from the Nephilim of old, which would, I mean, it checked a lot of boxes, you know what I mean? Like, you know, maybe they would have some abilities that we don't have. Maybe they could, you know, so, you know, yeah, that was an easy answer, you know? Yeah. However, my experiences have not been what I would perceive as something that was trying to deceive me, had ill intent, and after they healed my hand, and they did it, you know, that last vestige that Kevin put to me, and you know, anybody that throws up this, you know, well, you could be greatly deceived, and you know, Genesis 6 clearly states, and the Book of Enoch, and the book. I've been around this for 3 decades. I've read and dissected all of that, you know. So when I say that I don't believe that they're Nephilim anymore, I mean it, man. I don't believe that. I think that they are something else, but I don't think that they are descended from these evil, cannibalistic, 6-fingered, double-road teeth, red-haired Nephilim of old. I don't believe that that's what these guys are. Does that mean that doesn't exist? Heck no. But I don't believe that what I've encountered and what I've interacted with. I do know that they are Christ-oriented. They revere the name of God. They revere the name of Jesus. That's the truth. That's going to be a hard pill for some to swallow. That's what I've experienced, man. Right. You know? Right. I'm no Bible thumper, man. You know, nobody's ever going to confuse me for a saint, ever. You know, I'm Saint Christopher the Depraved at one point. But I mean, the reality of it is that hasn't been our experience, and we don't believe that. And there was a time I think where all of us did believe that. I don't think that's what's going on anymore, you know?
Yeah. No, totally get it. Totally get it. Yeah, it's you know, and that's the thing about like shows like mine and Rob's and Tex, you know, a bunch of us that people can go on to and have, you know, they can talk about their encounters, because you know what? None of them are the same. So that's why we all, you know, believe a little different than, you know, I might believe a little different than you or Rob, or, you know, and that's why, because it's what happened to us, which again, it circles around to where, you know, that's where all of this stuff is connected, you know?
That's the true value. It really is. Take forensic research, historical research, take all that out of the equation. The value of true research lies in the comparisons and of the nature of experiences and looking for commonalities and looking for common threads. Like platforms like this, other platforms where we don't all have to, it's good that we don't all agree on everything, because nobody knows anyway. You know what I mean? So to look for, like, the only way the ball gets moved forward is if we see, okay, so you saw an orb, but it was in this environment. I saw one that was in this environment. But the bottom line is we both saw an orb. You know what I mean? Like, looking for those commonalities is where maybe we get some insight and a little bit of light gets shed on some of this stuff. It's the rest of it. Literally, all it does is create argumentative camps, man. You know what I mean? And you know, and that's, you know, whether you're a biblical creationist, whether you're a straight up aper, whether you're a ufologist, whatever that looks like, there's still a commonality to all of it if we put aside like our personal belief systems. You know what I mean? And just look at the facts and the evidence of the experiences, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We always say that we've never walked in anybody's shoes. That's why I'll listen to all people's accounts without judgment or ridicule. And, you know, I'll be the first person to tell people, and some people kind of like, oh, Rob, you know, why do you say that? I'm not in the camp that Bigfoot is the big friendly forest giant. That's not my belief. You know why that is? Because my experience was not friendly at all. It was terrible. You know what I mean? So that was my first impression. Now you might have had somebody that came through and rescued you. You know, picked you out of a ditch unwittingly, you didn't know, and took you back to your camp. We've heard stories like that, which is phenomenal, right? So I think it just depends on, again, your perspective and what you experience. You know, people experience ghosts, and the ghost experiences are very spiritual and enlightening. And other people's, they're demonic and they're scary. So there's so many people in this world. We all experience different things. You can't put everybody in the same basket, if you will.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. You know, Kevin Key coined a term that I try and adhere to, and it's don't let your paradigm dictate your experience. Let your experience dictate your paradigm, man. You know, and I that has always resonated with me because, you know, coming from a devout Christian household, it would be so easy for me to close my mind to some of these other things because my Christian upbringing and belief system dictated that I had to, you know, and yet I don't have to. I can look at what's happened to me and discern it in my own way, and I can apply Christianity to it if I feel it's relevant, or I can discard it and put it somewhere else if I feel it's relevant there, you know, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, God gave me a brain for a reason, you know, and blind trust in other people's interpretations doesn't seem like a wise course of action ever, you know?
Yeah. Totally agree. Rob, you got anything else?
No, I had a question though. If he heard about, you know, we talked about the BFRO a little bit earlier, and you know, and either other reporting agencies, and some of these people are so staunch on the fact that if there's anything paranormal in an investigation or experience, that they omit it before they publish it, and they have a backup version of the actual story. I heard that not too long ago from 3 different people from the BFRO was telling me this. I had one of them on my show about 6 months ago, and that's another problem where people, the general public or people that are interested in this field, get confused. You know, you talk about all these parties arguing, you know, the flesh and blood concept versus the paranormal or the supernatural, the spiritual. Why just can't some of these reporting agencies just keep the story as is and not create their own narrative? Because there's too many people out there. Now, television is a medium, right? It's entertainment. I get that. But when you're supposed to be a organization that's supposedly or allegedly producing the truth, I hate the narrative. And I think this is a big narrative spin, unfortunately, for many people.
No, I can verify 100%, Rob. Oh, sorry.
You're good. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, okay. Who's talking, me or him? I'm not sure.
We're good.
It's you. You're up.
Okay. I can verify 100%. One of the reasons why Chuck stayed involved was so that he would have access to the back files, the stuff that isn't published.
Okay.
And 95% of those back files contained an encounter story that had some paranormal aspect in it. That being said, I find it not to character assassinate somebody, because that's what the head of the BFRO has done for a living. But I find it humorous that now M&M is engaging in talking about the orb phenomenon that accompanies Bigfoot. It almost looks like a really transparent, desperate grab for relevance. Because, and I was at the Summerfest in Oregon, and Cliff Barrickman was one of the speakers. You know, those guys are a dying breed, man. They just are. They're. It's not relevant anymore because the overwhelming nature of 90% of the encounter experiences have a paranormal aspect to it. That's just the truth.
You know, I met Ken. Barrickman. He, Cliff. I'm sorry, I said Ken. Cliff. And in person, very nice guy, very cordial, pretty cool. We took a picture, hung out. But the minute that I talked about what if Bigfoot is this, he shut me down, man. It's only an ape. It's an animal. It's an ape. You know, it's an oversized gorilla type thing. I mean, I'm exaggerating that a little bit, but it's a mammal. There's nothing paranormal or different about it. And I'm like, okay, thank
Funny
you.
Him hanging out to dry lately,
Yeah,
So, like, I know he was at this thing in Oregon, and him and Brett and Jill from Flash of Beauty had rented a Airbnb, and they split it with Cliff. Now, Jill and Brett are not apers by any stretch of the imagination, and they ended up cracking a few bottles of wine and having a deep, and it got aggressive conversation with Cliff about this, and he just literally, she said it was brutal. Like, he is so narrow-minded at this point. Like, unfortunately, that's the problem with these guys, is they're gonna have to die on those swords, man. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like that they've invested so much of their life into this narrative. And I know, honestly, like, I get the first gen crew, I get Peter Bird, that's all they knew of, I mean, there's nothing really paranormal on the face of the Patterson-Gimlin footage. So what else do they have to base their belief system off of initially? But now, I mean, it's literally like the tide has shifted so dramatically out of that narrative that, there's only a couple kind of last gasp groups hanging in there. And sadly, he's one of them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always tell Krista this story. Even Ron Moorhead told me 30 years ago, if I'd have met him, he just said, "Young man, turn around, go home. I don't want to talk to you," because when we were talking about paranormal, right? And then he brought up the quantum mechanics. Is that what it's called? Quantitative
Something his book is,
the quantum Bigfoot.
Quantum Bigfoot and Bigfoot Unveiled, which is like Quantum Bigfoot too. They're fantastic read. Ron's probably got the best spin on the whole thing. He really does.
Yeah, he does.
I respected him.
And he even told me now today, Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he said 30 years ago he was a flesh and blooder, but now today he goes, hell, Rob, I don't even know. They might just be aliens for all I know today. So he really blends everything on all sides and makes great points on all the sides, which to me, that's the refreshing part of what Ron does. And he's going to be 80 years old, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's up there. He's definitely up in age. Wow. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming on, Chris.
Oh, it's my pleasure. There's nothing I like better than just rolling up our sleeves and talking about some of these things, man. I kind of, I mean, like I say, I'm always very cautious about who I'm talking to, but
sure.
I have a lot of trust in both you guys, and I feel like you're well intentioned, and that's always been a big thing for me. Like, the people that are engaged in this publicly, that have platforms, that are doing it for solid reasons and have an open forum. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, that's so important, man. You know what I mean? Like, anybody that's driving narratives home and agenda driven or click driven, like, that turns me off, man. I don't really want to. I don't want to get in the ring with them people. You know what I mean? I don't need to. There's too much of that kind of, nasty vibe going on in this thing. And this is definitely a beacon spot. So is yours, Rob. I appreciate you. I don't watch a lot of anybody else's stuff, but I know you from Bettina, who I love and trust. He's a close friend, and Wolf, obviously, who's gone through what he's going through right now. But that opened up a door for me that I probably would never have investigated if it wasn't. I'm grateful that you guys are in my life. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
It was pleasure meeting you for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We've been in the same circles for a while, Rob.
Yeah, very good. When you get your internet taken care of, maybe I'll have you on in the fall or winter. That'd be cool.
Let me know, man. I'll be happy to do it, brother.
Very good, brother.
It'd be awesome.
Right on. You guys, I'm going to let you go. Have a great night, Krista. Rob, it was a pleasure to talk to both of you, and we'll reach out soon, man.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Chris. And thank your wife for letting you come on.
She's laying in bed with a little bit of a head cold. She says, I said, it's blondes and booze. She said, BOOZE. I said, probably only on weekends.
If that, though, really, we don't, not a whole lot.
Yeah.
She's just goofing, man.
Yeah, I know. It's all good.
Love you.
It's all
All right,
good.
guys.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Good night.
Bye-bye. I appreciate him coming on. That was
Yeah.
good. He's always a wealth of information, and I like his views. I like that Rob, people you've had on your show, I've had on my show, and other people's shows, that everybody has they talk about their encounters,
Yes, correct.
and they're all different. And so why this is why this person believes this way, this is why this person believes this way, but it all that's weird to me. That's why I think there's some kind of weirdness to it, because they're all different.
Well, I was about to say everything's the same but different, and again, I'm open to all the aspects of this phenomenon, because we always say, and this is just cliche, we hear this always tossed about, that nobody's an expert. Nobody really knows,
Right.
And everybody's encounters the same but different.
Yeah.
I mean, some have seen Bigfoot cloak, some have seen it as a flesh and blood creature.
Yeah.
I've seen it more to metamorphosized from a human looking thing into almost a demon. You guys seen the pictures, or the rendition, and but everything is different, and that goes with the paranormal. Like I said earlier, ghosts. I mean, whatever. It's just so much. The thing is, what we need to do: always have your head on a swivel, always be open-minded and open to different new ideas, because there's not one person that's correct or right or wrong.
Absolutely. And that's why we do this, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I do. I love it. You learn something new every day. Whether you can choose to take that information and run with it, or put it on the back burner and say, well, okay, I'll but that's fine too, though.
Yeah.
You can't have a bunch of people that all agree, because that would make for a boring show. And who wants to do boring, right?
Right. That's why I love doing these.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in tonight, and tomorrow night. Honestly, we don't have a topic yet, so be a surprise, because we're not sure.
Yeah. Well, it's that time of year. I'm finding it difficult to even get guests too for the shows, just because everyone's on vacation, or if you're going after a Bigfoot person, they're in the field.
Right. That's true. Very, very true.
So the summer does tend to, it's late with guests, but it's okay. We always come up with something fun.
Yeah. And then next week, you got somebody filling in for me. Didn't Monica say she would?
Well, you're going to be on this Tuesday.
No, I'm off this Tuesday.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I am going on vacation starting on this Saturday.
I think, Monica told me she could probably do it. I got to remind her.
Yeah, she did.
But that's next week. So, yeah, she says she could probably do it.
Yeah.
And I forgot, too, I got a cool guest on Tuesday, which you're going to be mad now. You're going to be mad, I think. I forgot who it was.
No, come on, spill it.
No, I don't know. I got to look it up now, because I've just booked them. Hang on, I could find it, since we got people who are probably listening. Who do you got on?
Yeah.
I know that it's somebody good. I just got to figure out how to open this up. Hang on. Okay. Blah, blah, blah.
Yes, Freaky Geek. Monica will be on tonight in about 30 minutes.
I've got Breaking Bad's Gonzo.
Oh.
Jesus Pant.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, he'll be on. And then I got that next week, Thursday, I got Dr. Dean coming on. So I got some pretty cool guests lined up. Yeah, Gonzo from Breaking Bad TV, for those that follow. He's had several encounters, and he believes in both the paranormal and the flesh and blood side of Bigfoot, and he's always entertaining, and he's been in several movies too, as well, I think. So
yeah, he has. We've had him on our show too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, he's great, and I actually met him in person at the Dogman conference. Super nice guy.
Yeah, down to earth. When I knew he was a Hollywood type, I'm like, oh man, he's probably, he's a very nice guy. You wouldn't know that he was an actor, just like one of the boys, Yeah. A guy I'd sit back and have a beer with.
Well, he's been on several shows, not just the Breaking Bad. Like I binge watched Longmire. It was on Netflix or something, but he was on that, and he's been on all kinds of them. Yeah, so yeah, he's a good one.
Cool. Yep.
Definitely is a good one. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in, and I'm here in about 30 minutes. It looks like Breezy is going to be co-hosting with Monica, so tune in over there to Our Paranormal World. And then tomorrow night, Brandy and I will be back here at 7 p.m. Central. Saturday night, you got your show late Saturday night.
Saturday night, midnight, me, you, and Monica, and
Brandy. Won't be me this week.
You'll be gone. So it'll be Brandy, hopefully. It might just be me and Monica again.
Yeah. And then
Brandy.
Yep, Paranormal Paul comes on Saturday too. And I know he's got Josh Hurd this week. So and then maybe PRT will be back soon too.
Yeah, maybe. You never know.
Yeah. Anyway, appreciate it. And we will see everybody tomorrow evening. Good night, everybody.
Hello, everybody, and goodbye, everybody.
Good night. And thank you. Real quick, I want to thank, I believe it was T-Bone. I just want to make sure. Yes. Thank you very much, T-Bone, for the memberships. Appreciate that.
Awesome. Thanks, T-Bone. Great guy.
All right. Good night, everybody.